Now, the general weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm David Kramer with Alaska Weather. Thanks for joining us for our general weather briefing for today. Starting off, we'll take a look at some of the flood potential that we have out for the state. We have some areas in south central Alaska down through the western Kenai Peninsula, as well as down in southwest by Lake Iliamna. And those are going to be for potential for significant rises in the river levels in those areas. Most of these areas are due to snowmelt flooding, as we've had a lot of warmer temperatures recently and some projected in the future as well. It's going to lead to more snowmelt and rapid rises in those river levels. Down in the Panhandle, we also have some areas where we could see some river rises, and we'll focus in on that area now here. We have a flood advisory out for the Chilkat River. That's going to be valid until 7 p.m. on Thursday. However, there is the chance that could be extended into the weekend. We are looking into that right now. And some of the areas of concern along the Chilkat River are going to be Klukwan and the Chilkat River Bridge. Over in the south central area, you can see these areas highlighted in the blue here, highlighting that potential for snowmelt flooding for some of the rivers in those areas as well. As we look up north, we'll start off in kind of the northern interior areas. These are red flag warnings that we have out for much of these areas, where we are seeing some higher temperatures, some lower humidities, but the real threat right now for that fire risk is going to be lightning strikes. And that's going to be, we have increased thunderstorm risk this afternoon. And then for the upper or northern interior, we are going to see that risk continuing tomorrow afternoon as well. Going to last out until 10 p.m. on Tuesday, where we will have that increased risk from lightning strikes to cause some fires. As we drop down into southwest Alaska, look up in the Kuskokwim, middle and upper Kuskokwim areas there, we have that same increase of fire potential from lightning strikes in the area. We are expecting those thunderstorms for today. Unlike up north, we only expect these ones to be in effect until 10 p.m. this evening on Monday. And that's going to be true down in the Kuskokwim Delta as well. Increased risk with those red flag warning criteria, fire risk there for lightning strikes in the area for thunderstorms that we have rolling in. For our fire danger, for just the spruce adjective of how likely fires are to spread, the biggest concern is up in the Yukon Flats area, where we have some extreme risk up there. We have some very high risk down through much of the interior, and then areas out west as we get to western interior, down in the lower Yukon Valley there, we are going to see some areas in the high category as well. Some areas around south central also high, with some smaller areas of very high in the Susitna Valley. Looking at our satellite imagery, what we'll notice here as we look out over mainland Alaska, a lot of the development of those convective clouds where we're seeing the showers and the potential for thunderstorms throughout much of the southern portion of mainland Alaska. We're going to see some of that up north as well. If you notice out east, not a lot of cloud cover, at least any of the high clouds for southeast Alaska. We're seeing a lot of that activity farther to the north. Taking a look at our weather for the remainder of the day, some of this troughing extending in out over mainland Alaska, allowing for some of that shower activity to occur there, where we are seeing those showers in southwest through a lot of south central, especially in the mountainous terrain, where we expect to see a lot of those showers develop, and then some more showers up along the Brooks Range. Down in the Panhandle, we're not seeing a lot of activity down there, pretty dry. That's from this high pressure that's sitting out over the Gulf of Alaska, keeping a lot of dry conditions for the Panhandle as well as the North Gulf Coast and into Kodiak Island. Farther out west, we have high pressure out over the northern portions of the Bering Sea, but low pressure down by the Aleutian Islands, bringing in some rain showers through the Aleutians, and out by the Alaska Peninsula, southerly flow ahead of our very slow moving front here is bringing in some rain, especially on the southern side of the Alaska Peninsula. Moving into our thunderstorm outlook, looking at mainland Alaska, we can see a lot of areas for southwest, extending in through much of the interior as well, up to the central and eastern portions of the Brooks Range and down through much of the eastern portion of the state as well, down to the Copper River Basin. Looking at tonight's weather, high pressure continuing to sit out over the Gulf of Alaska, keeping southeast Alaska fairly dry as well as much of the North Gulf Coast and into much of south central Alaska for tonight. Some showers lingering, especially in the evening hours for southwest Alaska and into the interior, and some rain up in the Brooks Range as well. Cooler conditions for northwest portions of the state, seeing some snow up there. Still seeing our low out by the Aleutian Islands here tonight, and with our very slow moving front continuing to bring rain to the Alaska Peninsula, starting to make it to the southern portions of Kodiak Island, and more rain out for the southern Bering as well as the central Aleutians. Moving into Tuesday, that low kind of just hanging out in place there, seeing more rain for the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, as well as getting into southwest Alaska now. High pressure continuing out over the Gulf of Alaska, continuing to keep areas in southeast dry as well as much of south central. But as we get especially into the afternoon and evening hours for mainland Alaska, we are expecting the development of showers and the potential for more thunderstorms, although the thunderstorm threat will be much more in the interior as we move into Tuesday, as it was for Monday, much more in southwest Alaska. Then in the Brooks Range, we're seeing some showers up there extending out over the northwest coast. Tuesday, thunderstorm risk extending by McGrath area and, like I said, into much of the interior eastern portions of mainland Alaska there. As we move into Wednesday, seeing our low pressure extending out over the state, allowing for a lot of shower development. And I know this is widespread over much of the mainland on the map here, but a lot of that is going to be in the afternoon and evening hours as we have a lot of the showers develop for southwest through the interior and up into the Brooks Range. High pressure over the Gulf of Alaska starting to shift off to the south and east, allowing for some activity to come into the main portion of the Gulf, starting to bring some more of the rain into south central Alaska, but still enough of that ridging out over the Panhandle where we expect them to be pretty dry on Wednesday. Out over the Bering Sea, we have high pressure moving in from the west out over the western Aleutians, drying out some of the areas of the Aleutian Islands. Below by the eastern Aleutians still hanging out there, bringing in some more showers for the eastern Aleutians as well as the Alaska Peninsula. Our thunderstorm threat on Wednesday is primarily focused on the eastern interior, extending down into the Alaska Range and up into the eastern portions of the Brooks Range as well. For our lows into Tuesday morning, dropping down into the mid-40s for the most part for south central and near 50 degrees as you get to more interior locations. For southeast Alaska, dropping into mid to upper 40s, a little bit warmer up there by Haines and Skagway. Tuesday afternoon highs in the 60s in southern locations, getting up into near 70 or the lower 70s for more northern locations of the Panhandle. For south central, primarily in the lower 60s, a little bit warmer in the interior, 76 degrees for Glen Allen. Wednesday morning lows dropping down into the 40s for all locations of south central and for Kodiak Island. And then for the Panhandle area, dropping down to near 50 degrees, staying a little bit warmer for northern locations. Wednesday afternoon, highs getting up to near 70 degrees for locations in the northern portion of the Panhandle, in the 60s for more southern locations, lower 60s for much of south central, and again, still warmer in the more interior locations, 76 for Glen Allen, 53 for Kodiak. Moving up to the west coast of the state, warmer in the Norton Sound area into the 40s, or staying in the 40s for those lows on Tuesday morning. Dropping down below freezing for much of Kotzebue Sound as well as all along the Arctic coastline. Dropping down into the 40s for the Brooks Range and in the 50s through much of the interior. Tuesday afternoon high is going to get up into the 70s for much of the interior. Up at Fort Yukon area, getting up to 81 degrees, one of the highest. Up along the Arctic coastline, getting up into the lower 40s. Some places like Utqiagvik staying a little bit cooler there, only getting up to 36 degrees. Mid-30s for much of the Kotzebue Sound area and near 60 for the Norton Sound. Wednesday morning low is going to drop down into the 40s for the Norton Sound area, right at freezing for St. Lawrence Island, just below freezing for much of the Kotzebue Sound area, and right around or just below freezing for the Arctic coastline. In the interior, you're going to have temperatures dropping down into the 50s for the most part, a little bit warmer, some of the locations a little bit farther to the east. Wednesday afternoon highs getting up into the 70s all over the interior, back up to around 81 degrees for the Fort Yukon area. Getting up into the upper 30s in the eastern portions of the Arctic coast, and then into the mid 40s for those western locations. Getting up into the 40s for some of the areas around Kotzebue Sound area, a little bit colder, a little bit farther to the west, and into the 50s for the Norton Sound area. For our areas down in the Bering Sea and Aleutian Islands, going to drop down into the lower 40s for Tuesday morning for the lows, and drop down into the mid 40s for much of southwest. Tuesday afternoon high is going to get up to near 60 degrees for southwest Alaska, warmer as we get farther inland. Getting up into the 50s for the Alaska Peninsula and staying in the 40s for much of the Aleutian Islands. Wednesday morning low is going to drop down to the lower 40s, 38 degrees at St. Paul. And then dropping down into the mid 40s for much of the mainland part of southwest Alaska. Wednesday afternoon high is going to get into the mid 50s along the coastline, getting up to near 60 in more interior locations, getting up into right around 50 degrees for the Alaska Peninsula, and then staying in the 40s for the Aleutian Islands. Thank you for watching our general weather section of our forecast for today.